Hello YouTube, it's William. This is the first of a series of videos I'm going to do called Frequently Asked Questions. And the first frequently asked question I get is about steel. And they usually say, what do I prefer? So basically what I prefer is probably not what is in your best interest. So I'm going to give you some pros and cons. And I assume this is O1 compared to AEB-L because that's the only choices you have on my website as far as production knives. So we're just going to stick with that. O1. O1 is a carbon steel that is going to patina. It's going to get that nice look to it like Grandpa's knife. But it will also rust on you if you don't maintain it. Keep it oiled. Keep it dry. If you live in a wet environment or a saltwater environment, it's going to take a lot of maintenance to keep that knife from rusting. So keep that in mind. It holds a great edge, easily sharpened. It's just a tried and true tool steel that works. It's a great steel. All right. Now compare O1 to AEB-L. AEB-L is a true stainless steel. We've done tests on this knife as far as corrosion and edge retention and everything else compared to my O1 and other manufacturers' steels and all this other stuff. And there's a playlist on my YouTube channel if you want to go back and look at all that. So boil down into a nutshell. The pros for AEB-L is it's a stainless. So you're not going to have all the maintenance to deal with as far as keeping it oiled and all this other stuff. It does strike a ferro rod, okay? Stainless steel will strike a ferro rod, because a ferro rod, a straight or a sharp edge will strike a ferro rod. It could be glass, all right? It has nothing to do with the steel. The steel comes into play as far as carbon versus stainless if you try to strike it with a rock, all right? There's a lot of difference. So, and there is a lot of carbon in AEB-L. So I haven't tried to strike it with a rock, but grinding it on the grinder, there are sparks. So it is possible to strike it with a rock, but you'd have to get the stars and the moon and everything else aligned perfectly for that to happen, I would imagine. It would be very difficult at best. All right. So it will strike a ferro rod, but a rock is going to be a tall order. All right. Now, as far as edge retention compared to O1 or in general, it holds an edge about 30% longer than my O1. It actually gets a sharper edge by feel and actually cutting material. It just gets a finer edge than O1, and it's easily sharpened as O1. I mean, the strokes are almost identical to get these two steels back razor popping, hair popping sharp. So AEB-L is a strange animal. It has a lot of K2 carbides and K1 carbides, and actually all these carbides, you get into the molecular structure of it, but it creates a steel that's easily sharpened because they realign very easily. All right, so that's what's great about this steel. Now the cons on it, I would not strop this steel a whole lot because it is easily brought back. Now, a lot of the stainless steels, you can strop them and you won't have any issues. But because this steel is so easily resharpened, if you put it on a buffing machine or something like that, it's going to curve or convex that edge in a heartbeat. All right. If you use buffing compounds and a strop and all this other stuff, then if you continually do it a lot, it's going to convex the edge quickly. All right. So I do not recommend stropping these knives a whole lot. And the strop that I have is just a piece of leather on a board, which gives it a hard surface so it doesn't convex as much. But if you're going to strop a knife and you want to keep that V grind, that flat grind, then you can strop it for a little bit, but then every once in a while, or I say more often than not, go back and put that V back on that knife with a flat diamond stone, okay? Because the edges on my knives, the steels on my knives, the Rockwell is about 60 to 61. They're harder than most knives, so it will eat up a natural stone in most cases. So I recommend, and I will get into the sharpening video about this later, but just you want a diamond stone with these knives, okay? So that it's going to be maintain a perfectly flat surface. All right. That is one of the cons on this knife if you like to strop knives. I don't recommend it, and I don't like the way AEB-L cuts when it's polished. It seems to cut better when you use like a ceramic rod on the edge or something like that has real fine teeth. That's when it's at its best as far as cutting. The little Victorinox mini steel that you've seen me use in many videos, it works fantastic on this steel. Okay, so not a big fan of stropping the AEB-L. Now a lot of my wood carving knives, I do strop them quite a bit, and they have a polished edge. This is a Drake that I've used quite a bit. It's a decent knife. It's not the best in the world, but it's a decent knife. For the money, I think it's like $30. Can't beat it. So, I mean, it takes a lot of stropping, though. It doesn't hold the edge up very well. But anyway, back to the AEB-L. The other thing with AEB-L is since the temperatures are so low when you're doing the temper and everything, when you're doing the final polish on these knives, the very fine edge of it, I mean, just the very fine, it's a very fine edge that gets a little bit hotter than the rest of the blade when you're polishing it, do it on the buffing wheels and all this other stuff. So it is not the optimum temper when you get this knife off, and I don't do a lot of high polishing because of that. All right. So when you get the knife, the edge on it, if you hit hard bone or something like that until you sharpen it a few times, then that edge is going to roll, or it's going to have really fine chips in it for that reason. Most of the time it'll roll because that edge has got a little bit harder than the rest of it. But after you sharpen it a few times, it usually only takes 5 or 6 times sharpening it. Really taking it to a stone or a flat surface, not stropping, but sharpening, okay? And you get past that part of that real fine edge that I hit it on the buffer, then it becomes a beast. And you can see in the videos, I mean, we went through bone with this thing, pano chopped through rib cages, vertebrae. I mean, once it gets past that part, it becomes a phenomenal steel. It's good when you first get it, but it's phenomenal after you've sharpened it a few times. And so anyway, but that's one other thing. Had a person contact me yesterday or day before, and he had a couple of Saner Scouts that they processed about 500 chickens with, and they were just completely exhausted. So they just threw the bloody knives in a bleach solution. He said he just had about a cap full of bleach into about a gallon of water or something like that. And he didn't tell me how long he left them, but he left them in there for an extended period of time. And the blades, he said, pitted, which he showed me pictures of it, and had little tiny black specks on it. And he's sending me the knives to see if I can buff those out or not. But anyway, so I just to do a quick test on my end, I took an old blade that I messed up on the final grind of it. So I threw it in a bleach solution, about a half a gallon of water with 2 capfuls of bleach, and the blade did discolor. There were some rust pockets on the blade, but it didn't pit. Now I assume if you left the blade in there long enough, it probably would pit. But anyway, and you can see there's little tiny black specks on here as well. All right, so the lesson to this is do not soak your knives in chemical solutions, and bleach is a chemical solution because you don't know how it's going to interact with the steel, because AEB-L does have a lot of carbon in it. It just like 440C has a lot of carbon in it. So if you want to sterilize your blades, then just washing them quickly in a bleach solution, then rinsing them off in some clear water is fine. But I do not recommend soaking any knife in any type of chemical or including bleach for any period of time. Okay, for that reason, because like I said, you don't know what kind of chemical reaction that steel is going to have with that solution. So, all right. In a nutshell, both steels are great. If you live in the desert, O1 will be perfect for you. If you live in a wet environment or a saltwater environment, I would recommend the AEBL. Or if you just prefer a less maintenance knife, the AEBL will suit you just very well. All right. So, with that said, you guys, we'll get the next one out just as quickly as we can. And appreciate your support. And we'll catch you guys again soon.